With Colossus and Mikhail Rasputin finally face to face after Colossus has been manipulated for the better part of the entirety of the House of X era, what will Colossus do? Will he forgive his brother for trespassing against him? Or will he end Mikhail Rasputin once and for all? What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, I'm going to be talking about X-Force number 46, written by Benjamin Percy with art by Robert Gill and color by Guru FX. So when last we left off, Colossus and Mikhail Rasputin were trapped in one of Mikhail's pocket dimensions after he was fatally shot by Jun Wei at the behest of the Chronicler, who has now betrayed Mikhail Rasputin and has saw an opportunity to free himself from his imprisonment that's lasted at least a handful of years. So the come to Jesus meeting can begin. Colossus versus Mikhail Rasputin, brother versus brother. This is the moment I think we have all been waiting for since we learned that Colossus was a puppet for Mikhail Rasputin, and even more so, just the idea that this is one of the more heartbreaking instances in X-Force, and for a lot of reasons, but for none other than we know just how deeply Colossus has no interest in wanting to kill Mikhail. He loves him, and in, I would dare say, his own roundabout and weird, problematic, and toxic way, Mikhail loves Colossus too. But he doesn't love him the same way that Colossus loves him back. And also, it's just the fact that Mikhail doesn't want to be family with Colossus. He wants to manipulate Colossus to make him do the things he needs him to do, just as he has been doing this entire time. Over the course of this issue, we see Mikhail trying to rationalize what he wanted to do, even pointing out some things that were glaring flaws in Krakoa that weren't wrong, but I felt like it was one of those appropriate moments for Anthony Mackie to show up and say,
he's out of line, but he's right.
And at the end of the day, Colossus knows that there's no good way this is going to end. Mikhail has turned Colossus against his friends, his family, caused him to kill his own wife, has caused him to commit all kinds of atrocities in the name of Mikhail Rasputin, but with Mikhail not taking credit for any of it. No one on the island is going to trust him again, at least not right away, not willingly, or who knows, maybe they will, but the point is, he has put Colossus through a great deal, and Colossus knows he has to kill him. Mikhail has to die. There is no other way around it. There are no ifs, no ands, no buts. And while we know that Colossus is typically seen as a pacifist, he's also, often seen as a person who is not as inclined to want to kill as maybe some other X-Men might be from time to time. He's not that type of character, and very rarely has he ever been. And knowing what we know about him, he's not being controlled by Mikhail at this point. He's not being controlled by the Chronicler at this point. He's not under the influence of the Crimson Gem of Sidorak at this point, and he's not been swayed by the words of Magneto in this moment. This is just Colossus, and that's what makes this sad, like really sad. I mean, I don't feel bad for Mikhail, and honestly, just knowing what we know about how he can control his own matter and manipulate space and time around him, I don't even think he's 100% dead. We've seen him literally revive and heal himself from grievous wounds in just this issue alone. However, it's still heartbreaking for Colossus, and that is what I'm more focused on here. Another very interesting part in all of this is the fate of the Orcus agent Jun Wei and the Chronicler himself. As we saw in the previous issue, it seemed like Jun Wei was going to clap his cheeks sideways, but that's not the case. She doesn't kill him because she's a rational person. Despite the fact she knows he's a mutant, despite the fact that she knows she was kidnapped, she still has the sense to look at the situation logically and realize that she's gonna need help to get out of this. She's a regular, degular person. She's not going to be able to get out of this on her own. And while this may be in some small part due to the Chronicler's manipulations, still, she's not dumb. The sad part about this is that while I felt, and I saw a lot of you in the comments say this as well, that this was an opportunity for Jun Wei to be redeemed. And it's interesting because she's a brand new character. We haven't spent a lick of time with her beyond what we saw in that previous issue, and we've only really seen her once or twice before this, and just in passing at best. And yet, here, it's one of those situations where we feel for her because Benjamin Percy is just that good of a writer. He's just that good of a storyteller that he made us fall for the trick, that he made us want her to be redeemed, that maybe going through all this, that we would go, oh, Of course, yes. This is an opportunity for X-Force to maybe pull the wool out from her eyes, remove the veil, and help her understand that mutants are not our enemy. And honestly, it seems like that was about to be the case. However, at the behest of Doctor Strange, Junwei's mind is wiped and she's sent back to Orcus. So we'll never know what could have been or what would have been. I think we can, speculate. And honestly, I don't think that it probably would have gone exactly the way a lot of people would have expected, that she just would have done a 110% 180 and just be like, yep, everything is fine and dandy. I love mutants now and I'm going to help Krakoa. I don't even think that was ever on the table. And anyone who thinks that that was, I'll just leave it at that. However, I also understand why Benjamin Percy took this narrative decision, because even in real life, people don't really change. I mean, yes, people change. I'm not the same person today that I was 5 years ago. I'm not even the same person today that I was a year ago. And I'm most certainly not the same person I was 20 years ago. I understand that, yeah, she wasn't gonna change. And even if she did, she wasn't going to change overnight, and most people rarely ever do change, if ever. So, yeah, I kind of get why they did it the way they did, but man, I am very saddened by it, because there was an opportunity there to at least start a thread. Like, honestly, if it were me, I would have rewritten this a little bit differently. I would have made it to where her mind wasn't wiped, but she was given the opportunity to stay with X-Force and help them or go her own way, and they give her the opportunity, and she decides, rather than go her own way, she goes back to Orcus, but she goes back to Orcus with just a little bit of doubt, that she starts to question that maybe the mutants aren't the monsters, that maybe just because the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants was responsible for the death of her parents, maybe that doesn't mean all mutants are bad. And then over time, you could build off that narrative. That is how I would have done it. But I'm not the storyteller here. I'm not the person who wrote this. And honestly, I feel like if Benjamin Percy went this direction, he did it for a very good reason. So yeah, I'll roll with that. Now, in the case of this one with the Chronicler, here is where I also kind of feel the same way. The Chronicler, as we see, doesn't ride off into the sunset with X-Force. He doesn't throw in his lot with the X-Men or anyone else for that matter. He's not here to be a hero. And to understand where the Chronicler is coming from here, because I know there's going to be some people who can be really angry and upset with the idea that the Chronicler has the power to help the mutants, turn the tide of this whole thing. And at the same time, he doesn't really want to do it anymore. He's been manipulated by Mikhail Rasputin for the better part of 3 or 4 years, and he's over it. He wants to go back to his life. He's tired of living in darkness. He's tired of living in shadow. He's tired of being beaten and manipulated and forced to write a story he doesn't want to write, that he has no heart in. And well, it's not to say that he couldn't be convinced to help X-Force in some capacity. I do not like the decision of him just saying, yeah, I don't care. The world's in shambles and mutant kind is screwed. I'm gonna go live my life. I mean, I think that is a very selfish thing to do, but considering the situation of everything that happened, everything we just talked about, we're taking this into account, I kind of get why he feels the way he feels. But once again, just as I said with Junwei, if it were me, if it was Blerd without fear, whose name was in the writing credit here, I would have gone about it a little bit differently. And granted, while I feel like some people might see the Chronicler as a Deus Ex Machina, he's actually not. His power isn't that absolute. And the way and the nature of his powers, he can't affect anything directly. But what I would have personally done is I would have had him maybe not so much necessarily go after Junwei, but once again, as I talked earlier, that maybe eventually Junwei comes around. I would say let Junwei have her free will to become the character we know that she could ultimately become, but maybe have, once she comes around, bring somebody else to the Chronicler, or if she chooses, give up her own free will of her own volition. But just the same, it all has to be by choice on her part. Maybe take somebody else and have, the Chronicler manipulate them, and then start turning the tide and stem the flow of things from there. And then once the deed is done, then let the Chronicler ride off into the sunset, because X-Force needs a dub, and they need it now. Like right now. Not now, but right now. But once again, I'm not the person who's writing the story. I'm not Benjamin Percy. My name is not in the writing column, so I'm not going to pretend to know what Benjamin Percy's long-term plan is. I do, however, appreciate him leaving the door open for the Chronicler to inevitably return. And I don't think it's going to be any time while Benjamin Percy is still writing this comic. It'll probably be somewhere way down the road, years from now. We see the Chronicler make his return, and honestly, I think it's a much deserved ride-off in to the sunset. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on any of my future videos breaking down comics like X-Force, as well as other comics from Marvel and DC. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about X-Force number 46. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.